saying I am not black, I am African as a way of privilege and to like elevate yourself is problematic, and to talk about black people and say those people and whatever as an African is also problematic. So we need to get to the bottom of both things.
Yeah, because like you said, on both sides, it's people feeling like they're better than the other group.
Definitely,
it's a black person being like, "Yo, I ain't one of them African booty scratchers,"
right.
And it's an African being like, "I'm African. We have heritage and we have culture. We are not." Do Africans have to perform blackness?
That's a really good question, actually. I think there's a perception of blackness that you have as an immigrant, as an African, when you first come to America. One that is
narrow.
It's narrow, but it's very caricatured. It's not. It lacks a deep understanding of race and racism, and not to say that's all being black is in America, but there's just such a wide expansion that you're not very aware of. You're not very aware of slavery. Not to say that only black identity in America is defined by slavery, but to an extent it is. Also, just in terms of like it's what you see on TV and media, why I keep going back to media and these misconceptions. So those misconceptions that I'm thinking my classmates in high school had about me being in Africa, to an extent I did, and some others have that of what it is to be black in America. So you get here and then you're exposed to all this history and you're exposed to all this information, and sometimes what people do is it's cool to be black to an extent. Like you want to like enjoy the benefits of being black without facing the perils that comes with it. So
let me just take the cool part. Let me not take the struggle part. And it's the same thing we do with African. Let me take the cool part.
But let me
when
not
it's
take
cool.
Exactly.
And let me not take the struggle part.
Definitely.
I'm not down for that.
But there's a change that starts to happen. It's very interesting because when I talk to other immigrants, when they first come here, especially Africans, and they talk about race, both Nigerian British people, Nigerian British blacks, Africans in general, there's this narrow-minded, I think, perspective they have about race. And I've watched in year 2 or 3, I would expand and they start to understand race as it appeals to America, and also what being black in America is, and the things you go through, the trials and the tribulations, in many cases the trials. And they start to own that, because you realize before you open up your mouth, you're black regardless. Even after you open up your mouth, you're black regardless. There's the issue of police brutality, or some cop is coming at you, you're black regardless.
Yeah, that's
Madi Diallo, black regardless.
Yeah, that's what Ebro says, and he was talking about the idea of certain people thinking that they're not black. He's like, oh, you're gonna find out.
Yeah,
you're gonna find out how people treat you.
Exactly.
And then you'll know what that experience is like, and you'll know what's made up and what's not, because a lot of people feel like buying into or even acknowledging racism gives it more steam. So I will ignore it as much as I can, so I can live my positive perspective, and I can be a rugged individual. And as long as I work hard, and as long as I
it's not good, but whether you acknowledge the elephant in the room is still the elephant in the room.
It's still there.
And then you start to see these changes also when these African immigrants, right? So I would say like of that parental age start to have kids. And you're like, oh, but don't forget you're this. But no, is your kid really just this? Your kid is also that. And so it keeps going back to the whole separation thing. So for me, I know in my maturation and just coming here and living here, early I was like, man, I'm black. I'm not about this whole. And even sometimes when my immigrant friends in college were trying to say, oh, you're becoming like them, I'm like, who's them? We're them. We're us. Like, you need to challenge that division. And I think a lot of times when we have that conversation, we're talking about the separation. So when you say perform blackness, many people perform blackness but don't want to give blackness its credit. Do immigrants perform blackness? Yes. Do Africans perform blackness? Yes. Just like African Americans perform blackness, but I don't think they may perform blackness if they are black, right? But what you're saying, I think that's a really good question, and I think therein lies this issue of calling people out, of saying, oh, you want to go find where you're from. Yeah. Wouldn't you want to find where you're from?
Because like you said, it's coming from a pure place of people wanting to connect.
So the fact is that there are people that came over to the Americas through the transatlantic slave trade, which is certainly messed up. And you definitely have to acknowledge that. But also is the understanding of the way Africa was split up, especially by the Europeans, and carved out and thrown into different pieces, and people there being treated in inhumane ways, like what the Belgians did to Congo.
Sure.
In some cases, what Europe has done to many parts of West Africa, and the way they stripped it of its resources, and in some cases continue to strip it of its resources.
Yes. And so
new colonialism is actually happening in many places in Africa.
Exactly. Right, and so that becomes the question. And so when people start asking the question, what's wrong with black people?
Right.
What's wrong with Africa? Without talking about what has been done
to it,
to black
there's
people.
actually nothing wrong with Africa.
What has been done to Africa. Exactly.
It's what is happening. It's what people are doing to Africa. Exactly. Africa by itself is fine.
And it's always been that way.
Yeah, exactly.
But when we talk about mineral rich place, Africa's rich.
Right.
Let's stop talking about it as if it wasn't rich. It's a rich place that was exploited because of its riches.
Exactly.
And it's always been that way.
Exactly.
But the way that they shape it in the narrative is that, oh no, give money.
Right. Well, and
give money to Africa, right. not a particular nation.
Right. Just Africa.
Just give money to Africa.
People tell me they're going to Africa. I'm always the dude.
Poor.
I'm the dude in the room that says, "You went to Africa? Where?" Like in a little bit like, can you don't say you just went to North America. You say where you went to. It's not a country. It's a continent. But actually, you know what you just said about like the stripping of its resources. Like what's wrong with Africa? Nothing's wrong with Africa. Is what you're doing to it. It's the same as to an extent blackness in America. It's like. Black people are great, like they're doing amazing things. But you don't hear those narratives.
Sure.
Open heart surgery would not be possible without a black man.
We're building on faulty ground.
Definitely.
So there's no way to have a productive conversation when the very terms that we're using don't exactly third world and all this stuff, developing. All these words that we use are inherently problematic.
We have to challenge. It's almost like the way they're saying chain migration. It's not chain migration. It's family reunification.
Sure.
You need to challenge the language first of all to have the right conversation, because if you accept the faulty language, then you build on a foundation that is not true.
Sure.
So we have to challenge the narratives, and we have to challenge those who will create these narratives, and that's why representation is so important. Because as we've seen with all these different commercials that keep coming up, where they keep making all these mistakes, you're like, did a black person approve that? Or do you have people in power who can say, look, this is pretty wrong?
Which
like,
means there might have been someone that had an issue with it, but they didn't have enough power to do anything about it.
Or we're not even working there in the first place. And that's the thing. We have to challenge the language.
Inclusion is very important.
Challenge the hierarchy.
And we have to,
Exactly,
We definitely have to challenge it. And speaking of challenging things, I want to challenge you, because you were saying that you don't think that I can pull off, that I can't dance well to African music.
I think
I felt like that was lightway offensive.
I think you could dance to African music.
Were you challenging my Africanness? Because I'm African, brother. After this conversation, I'm full on that. I'm African as.
I'm gonna tell you this. Well, you're not gonna say it. I'm gonna tell you this. Look, this is the thing. I feel like when you move, you should just move to it. I feel like you have to do what you're seeing people do instead of just moving to the music.
Put some music on, man. Turn on the Bluetooth. Put some music on, and we'll dance.
You just gotta move.
We'll dance
really and not think too much about it. Just put it. It's all in the waist. And then you get a little more aggressive, like. See, Elliot can move. I didn't say he couldn't move. Okay, let him just. Hey, go E.